Today on the Retro Zoo Super Show. Wait a minute, that's not who you're supposed to marry.
Live from Kakariko Village. Broadcast throughout the Retroverse, transmitted to the real world via a maze of wires connecting a Super Nintendo to a Wii, to a Wi-Fi network, and finally to the internet. The Techno Funk Boy presents the Retro Zoo Super Show. Now here are your hosts, Kai and Steven.
Welcome to the Retro Zoo Super Show. I am your host, Kai. I am here with our producer, Drum. Drum, how is it going today?
I am functioning normally.
Fantastic. Okay, so I cannot remember if we said this in the last episode or if we said it on our Discord server. But today's episode was supposed to be about the just amazing soundtrack from the game Quake. But Steven was not able to come today, and he really wanted to be here for that discussion, and so we did postpone that a week. And that actually was kind of an issue because I have been so tied up in wedding plans that it's been difficult to, really kind of dig into show topics.
I thought you had like a 30 episode plan for Final Fantasy IV.
Well, yeah, I do, but I wanted to wait till after the wedding for that.
It ends with a wedding.
That really got me kind of thinking about weddings in video games, or really lack thereof. There haven't been very many, but of games that I've played. But before we get to that, I was able to play a little bit and started on the game Bravely Default, which is cheating because that's not a retro game, and I have long touted that I am an exclusively retro player, which I mean, it actually is not even really true because we went through cycles of playing Broforce and such, and that's also not retro, but I was loaned the game by a friend, and have started in on that, and I'm greatly enjoying it. And for those of you who've played the game, I knew it had a retro feel to it. I didn't quite know that, it's like, I started it up and I was like, okay, yeah, so this is Final Fantasy. And then I went to the shop and it's like in the Magic store, and it's like, oh, this is actually literally Final Fantasy. This isn't just, like a variation on the theme. This is actual Final Fantasy. And it most certainly, it pulls all the names and such from Final Fantasy, and you have the whole Warriors of Light theme, and all the crystals and the four elements, and such going on in this game. It's very clearly the Final Fantasy. And so I actually had to look it up because this is, it's like, I mean, yes, it's Square Enix, but normally, even when they do a thinly veiled Final Fantasy variation, they at least veil it a little bit more. But this like literally, it started off as a sequel to Final Fantasy IV Heroes of Light, and so yeah, like literally this is a Final Fantasy game, and so it just kind of when it split from that and started going in its own direction as a standalone game. They kind of kept those elements in it. So I'm not very far into it. I guess about 4 hours into it. It's got a lot of the elements of Final Fantasy games that I really like the job system is usually something I very, very much enjoy in the games it's utilized in. I think probably most successfully in Tactics. That game is just an amazing work. Really just excellent game. Final Fantasy V, because it was not the SNES Final Fantasy that they brought over. It was the one that they didn't. Probably doesn't get as much love as it should, but it is such a great game to sit in between 4 and 6, just because it's so lighthearted while maintaining, a very good story with very good characters, and not to say the whole thing is lighthearted. There are parts that certainly aren't, but it has that humor to it that is really, really nice, especially in between two very, very serious games. And it uses the job system very, very well, and is, I think, all the better for it. Games like that who can really utilize the job system are able to have a smaller cast of character and really develop those characters. And 4 hours in, it seems to be the case in Bravely Default that is happening. I've already getting a feel for what's these characters are like, and what their dialogue is like, and how they're going to react to certain situations. And so that has been absolutely a lot of fun. But as I say, it's like between the soundtrack for Dice and Dreary that we've been working on just nonstop lately, and because we're coming up on an album release on that, but more about that in a future episode, because that is going to be coming up fairly soon. We don't have an exact date yet, but it's going to be in the next several weeks, and so please do stay tuned for that. But between that and just wedding planning, it has just been a crazy time period, and remind me in the future not to schedule album releases, next to weddings, because that was dumb. Thankfully, weddings is one of those things that should, probably only happen once. That's what we're going for. And so I won't have that exact problem in the future. But yeah, there's just been a ton to do.
I have been helping.
Yeah, Drum has been helping. What did Anla got you? What were you were picking the band?
No, we were going to play.
Okay. All right, we'll figure that out later. But okay, so what did they have you doing? She have you doing?
Picking flowers.
Are you good at that?
No, my visual sensors cannot distinguish colors.
Wait, you see in black and white?
Affirmative.
Does Anla know that?
I do not believe so.
Okay, well, we'll have to tell Anla about that, that very, very soon. Okay. Oh, in any case, so it's going to bring us to the topic today, because, with the wedding coming up, there's, I actually started thinking about this several weeks ago, and at the time I could only think, off the top of my head, I could only think of, like, one wedding that I recall from retro games. And, obviously, for those who've listened for any length of time, that my direct experience with retro games is not exhaustive, and far from it, and that in a lot of these games I'm actually experienced for the first time. But I did think of a second one, and I tried to look at some lists, and there have been several, but it's still kind of a rare occurrence in video games. But there was one that I really love, and I wanted to talk about it in this episode, just because the way I experienced it is like exactly the opposite of the way it's meant to be experienced, and so I wanted to kind of get into that. Now the one that Drum mentioned earlier was at the end of Final Fantasy IV, and at the end of the game, it ends in just kind of one of those just very classic epic moments of not only is the world saved, but there's a new king on the throne, and the king takes a bride, and that is when Cecil and Rosa get married at the end of that game. And much later, when they do the sequels to the game, during the Wii era, that does play out, because they do have at least one child. I forgot if they had more. We're going to be talking about Final Fantasy IV, probably at the start of Season 2, which is going to be... Season 1 is going to end with Episode 100, and we will start Season 2 soon thereafter. And so I think we're going to start off Season 2 with Final Fantasy IV, and I do plan to play the sequel, the After Years, as one of those episodes. And so we'll be chatting a lot about that. So I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's just the way Final Fantasy IV is tied up in just absolute triumph. It has very much kind of a Lord of the Rings element to it. I think that most of the comparisons for Final Fantasy IV are to Star Wars, and those are very appropriate comparisons. And we'll kind of get into that. But there's such a Lord of the Rings streak into that, where you have like an Aragorn type character who starts the game, in a much darker place, but it is ultimately revealed as the true king. And Cecil does take the throne of Baron at the end of the game. You find out midway through the game that the king of Baron has actually been dead for some time and has been replaced, and so the kingdom is left without a king, and so you have Cecil who takes the throne. And very much like Aragorn, he is a figure of a greater stock than the more normal types. So Aragorn is Dunedain, who is this great ancient, long-lived race of just of people who are just a little stronger and wiser than the normal humans, and he's of this race, and that's why he's actually quite a bit older than he looks in Lord of the Rings. And we find out in the course of Final Fantasy IV also that that Cecil is similarly of different stock, of different heritage, and he is a Lunarian, and so almost kind of through the bloodline, much like Aragorn, is just destined for just greatness. And so you start off the game as a disgraced Dark Knight, and in the game as a paladin and king, and much like toward the end of Lord of the Rings, the world is gathered for a wedding, and that has that kind of that ancient feel to it, that it used to be like the difference between a comedy and a tragedy is that tragedies ended at a funeral and comedies ended in a wedding. It wasn't necessarily that comedies were hilarious, and tragedies weren't. But it was kind of an expectation of where things ended. And I think like in modern storytelling, we're so much now attuned to like this just very immediate romantic love and attraction, that there really isn't time for that to develop into a marriage. And so, I mean, kind of one of those things that make Final Fantasy IV different is that the Cecil and Rosa start out as a couple, and they have been for a long time. And so this isn't like a story of Cloud meeting Aerith or Squall meeting Rinoa and just having these immediate feelings, but this story takes place over the course of only days or weeks, and so there's not really time to develop it that far. And so like modern romances are developed so much differently than they used to be. And I think that's why we just don't see our main characters really getting married in video games. It's just we're expecting something different now. We're expecting it's almost like the culmination of the romance in our modern media is actually the start of the romance, and not the actual culmination of romance. And I really do think that we've lost something in that, and we celebrate the immediacy of the feelings rather than celebrating the a long-term commitment, and to celebrate like the that kind of commitment that stands by each other in all times. It's one of the things I really love about Cecil and Rosa's story. It's so like when she hears that Cecil might be dead, and this is toward the beginning of the game, and she goes and hunts for him herself, to the point that she gets seriously ill because of her efforts to find him. This is the actions of not someone who has a strong attraction to someone, but someone who is dedicated to another person. And that carries that kind of meaning in, later when Cecil has to go then save Rosa. You know, it's an act of that sort of dedication and commitment. So all of that is going to bring us to the game I actually want to talk about. The most, I guess the most prominent wedding that in a game, at least the game I could think of that I've played, the most prominent wedding as part of a plot that I've experienced was in Lufia 2, Rise of the Sinistrals. So this was kind of a lesser known game that came out on the SNES, and it's really kind of a shame that it was so lesser known, because it had some just incredible ideas and executions that were just exceedingly influential in gaming thereafter. And I think part of that was that it was, it was like the sequel to, honestly, just a really kind of mediocre JRPG, which was called Lufia in the Fortress of Doom. Besides being just kind of an epic title, this was a game that was developed by Taito, and it wasn't just all that great of a title. There wasn't necessarily much wrong with it. It's just that it was, just pretty much a standard JRPG. There wasn't anything really special about it. Now, when Lufia 2 came out, there was a lot special with it. It came out in Japan in 95, in North America and Europe in 96. And I got it, just because, I'd finished a game. I went to Walmart looking for another JRPG to play because I'd finished the ones I had, and I saw it. And even though I hadn't actually played Lufia 1, but, it's like, well, I don't, we'll check this game out. There's plenty of games that I had played a sequel before the first one. I had fiddle around with Final Fantasy, but I didn't actually sit down and play it until after I played Final Fantasy IV. And this was honestly fairly common, at the time, as my SNES collection was much larger than my NES one. But in this case, it's just, it's a remarkable game where if you go into dungeons, there are enemies there, and in each room is some sort of puzzle to get through, and you can dodge the enemies. You can, the room itself only will move its pieces when you move. And so it's not real time action here. It's more like, a chess match, where if you want to dodge these enemies, because you can see them, and so if like this is like really going to be, the difficult battle, you probably know what these enemies are if you want to battle them. And so they move as you move. And so, it's kind of like them taking their turn, just so immediately after yours that they're happening at the same time. But, you can sit there and you can study the screen for as long as you want, and they'll sit there and wait for you. But there's also these puzzles going on that, different types of block puzzles, or that sort of thing. And, it has just a very, very fresh feel to it, and very, very innovative. It has one dungeon that is randomized, which, this was the same time that, other games like Diablo were really kind of making that sort of thing famous, but just wasn't something you really saw on NES. And so this was an optional dungeon that was kind of cool. It's like it stripped you of your equipment and your levels, and you had to get as far down into the dungeon as you could. And the goal was to hit level 100 and to defeat the boss there. And there were just a lot of really cool elements, but it was like this challenge in the middle of the game that you could take on at any time and kind of, work your way down. Just stuff like this was really, really remarkable. And so this is my first time playing it, and I knew that it was a prequel to Lufia 1. But I didn't know exactly how all of that stuff fit in. And so at the start of the game, the main character is this guy named Maxim. And he kind of starts off the game with this woman named Tia, who's been just a longtime friend and is obviously, hitting on Maximum at every possible moment of the game, and not really in an annoying way, but in a very cute way. And I really liked her character. I thought she was really, really cool. And he gets caught up in this quest against these great monsters called the Sinistrals. And in that quest, Tia's hanging around and he meets other characters, and the plot unfolds. And then halfway through the game, you think you've won. But in the game, there is this romance that is developing between Maxim and Salon, and he seems much more interested in her than in Tia. And so at this time, as things are settling down and they go back home, the Maxim and Salon get married. And Tia goes away heartbroken. And I am playing this game, I am just astonished that this has happened. But I was actually surprised at the wrong thing, because I hadn't played the first one. And so they have a child, and then the second half of the game picks up where they realize, oh no, we haven't actually beaten these Sinistrals, and we've got to go take them out. And so they go and do so. And for the longest time, I'm like, what in the world has happened? They've taken significant time off from the story. It's this massive gap in time where the main characters are getting married and having kids, and it's like this moment of real surprise for me. Now, all of that had to have happened because of the first game, which I didn't know. I did get Lufia and the Fortress of Doom later, and I started up the game, and it starts off really familiar, because it starts off in the last level of the second game. Like I said, Lufia 2 is a prequel of Lufia 1, and it takes place essentially 100 years beforehand. Well, 100 in Lufia 1, the game starts off 100 years ago. This great hero Maxim and his band of friends took out the Sinistrals, but they're on the rise again. So what's going on? Well, you play through the whole last level of the game of Lufia 2 in Lufia 1, and you're essentially fighting the final boss, and Maxim and Salon are unable to get out of the tunnel in time, and they die. This isn't spoilers because this is the prelude of the stupid game, but in the course of the game, you find out in Lufia 1 you are their descendant. And so, of course they had to have kids, right? I mean, that might have been a little short-sighted of the game developers. It's like, all right, so you're the descendant of Maxim, and the other ones are like, wait, didn't we have him die like in the final battle? Well, I guess they had kids before that or something. And then they decide to tell that story. So if I had played Lufia 1 first, the proper reaction to Lufia 2 is like, who is this chick Tia? What the heck is going on? Where's Maxim's wife? And so people are probably playing this game going like, no, seriously, he's got to get married to a different person and have children. I don't understand what's going on with this game. And he does in the course of the game itself, which is really interesting way to handle that. And I'm really glad they did it, because it was really cool to be able to see, like, over the course of a significant amount of time in our characters' lives, and not just over days or weeks or in most months. And it was really cool to be able to watch characters in a JRPG, grow up and get married and have a family, and then to in this case kind of finish off things for good. But I always, that's one of the parts of the game that has always really stuck out to me. Not just because of my surprise that he dumped Tia for Slan, but because it was a real look into these people's lives. So many of the Final Fantasy games do not end the way Final Fantasy IV did. They end with a snapshot of a moment. I remember when Final Fantasy VII came out, and the end of Final Fantasy VII was really controversial for a while, because everybody was like, well, did they survive? Did they survive? And that, that I didn't really have any doubts to that. I mean, the fact that Red's species was reborn suggested to me that he survived, but it never really told what happened next, until stuff like I Had Been Children came about. But that's something that's interested me, and it might not be great gameplay, but what happens to the heroes? Are they able to kind of put quite literally all this trauma behind them? Are they able to make a life for themselves? Especially, that's such a huge question in Final Fantasy VII, because you've got Cloud, who is so mixed up in his own memories, and everything in his mind is so tainted and just jumbled that you really wonder if he is really able to kind of separate the Zack part of himself from his part and move on with life, or is he always stuck there? that's a theme that was played with in Advent Children. I think it was really great. Final Fantasy VI has just this massively epic ending, but it is an ending that is a moment in time, and it's not, it's not what happens. Are these people able to rebuild? Are they able to reestablish their roles? Are they able to do this and that? These are questions that are not answered. It's just that moment of victory and stuff. And that's also a game that just leaves just a ton of questions, because it's like, yeah, we're victorious, but we're victorious with a broken land. And so I've really always been interested in that question of rebuilding, not only rebuilding the land, but rebuilding lives. And I would think that probably does have it's just would be terrible gameplay, but at the same time, it's something that's always interested me. It's one of the things I loved about Lord of the Rings is, like, I've heard quite a few people complain about all the different endings it has, but Tolkien takes seriously the effect of this quest on the people who took it. And he tells us essentially that Frodo's never able to come back. There's always something that was crushed in Mordor. And so it's like the real conclusion of that evil and that darkness is the crossing of the sea for healing. And so I love that sort of stuff in Tolkien. And I love that they were able to talk about that in Final Fantasy IV. It does seem, at times a little rushed and such, but it really is great to be able to end a game with a wedding, and to end the game knowing how things are being rebuilt, to end it with the throne occupied again. And so with that, we are going to take a break, and we will be back in just a moment. Hey, it's Kai here. We recently finished our latest EP, Quest of the Dragon Warrior. It's an electronic tribute to Dragon Warrior and the amazing music that game gave us. We're really excited about how this music came out, and we want you to have it for free. If you go to technofunkboy.com/Dragon Warrior and sign up for our weekly newsletter, you'll get the songs to download and keep for free forever. That's technofunkboy.com/Dragon Warrior, or check the show notes for a link. Okay, we are back. Thanks so much. And Drum, you said we have a caller?
We have a caller on line 1.
Okay, yeah. Hey, caller. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. This is Kai. You are on the Retro Zoo. What's going on? Oh, yeah, Kai. Yeah, this is your attorney? Okay. I mean, we're on the air. Oh, okay. Well, I can be on hold, but I do bill you for that. Okay, no, never mind. What's going on? Well, I'm afraid that we've got a lawsuit filed against the show. They do name both. Well, actually, all three of you for you, Steven, and Drum, for damages. and they say that you mocked them publicly and disparaged them and hurt their feelings. I gathered. I accidentally left the complaint in the car, and but yeah, the point is you hurt somebody's feelings and they're suing you.
Wait, what are you talking about? Whose feelings did we hurt?
Yeah, it's by this organization, the Esoteric Order of Dagon.
Wait, the fish people?
Kai, don't call them the fish people. This is the kind of stuff that gets you in trouble.
No, that's not. That's like literally true. They're like half fish, half human.
Oh, so they're like literally fish people.
Yes, they're literally fish people.
Well, I don't know. I mean, like, what did you call them?
I didn't call them anything. Like, one called up and was complaining that we were pronouncing Sahuagin incorrectly.
Yeah, I do think that's Sahuagin, not Sahuagin. That's wrong.
Well, okay, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, and also Salon. What I mean, is this like somewhere you go for a haircut? I don't think that her name is pronounced Salon.
The games did not have voices. Yeah, this is kind of how just I pronounced it as a kid. I don't know that there's an actual pronunciation.
Well, don't call her something that you go to get a haircut.
Okay. There's only so many ways you can pronounce that name.
Celine? Celine? Celan? Salun?
Salun? You can't get it's an A.
It could be Salon.
Oh, that's a far worse name. But okay, I'm sorry. What are they claiming?
Well, they say there's something about, you said they were like sacrificed people to Dagon.
Stephen. Yeah, Stephen did say something.
No, don't admit it. Don't admit it. We're going to court over this. Don't, that's not something you want to just admit.
Well, okay, no, I didn't say anything. I was trying to be nice to the guy, but but Steven's had some run-ins with them or something.
Well, I mean, that's fine and all, but you can't say that people sacrifice people on the air.
Well, I mean, don't they?
Well, I mean, yeah, but you can't just say it. That's wrong. That's just rude.
I don't care if it's rude if they actually do it.
Well, still, I mean, it's just poor taste.
Okay, look, I'll talk to Steven about it, but what are we going to... They're going to now suing us?
Yeah, and it's for a lot of money, too. It's far more than you have, especially after my attorney's fees.
Oh, gosh. Okay, what is it going to... can we make these people go away? Can we, I mean, isn't it a good defense that they actually sacrifice people to Dagon and they are fish people?
He says in here that I wouldn't go ahead and get it so I can read some of this. Did he say he's called him something like Fishy Fish Man?
No, he called himself that. He said that's one of the insults he hears. Well, actually, on second thought, I think Stephen did say that.
Well, don't admit it. Can you please just say, no, we didn't do any of these things?
But we... Oh, my goodness. Stephen is going to... Look, I don't understand. It's like, is there like a large number of these people?
Oh yeah, they've got their own organizations and stuff. It's just, it's like Sahuagin against something or other.
It's Sahuagin.
Oh, I know that. I was just trying to empathize with you with your bad pronunciations of things.
Okay, that's fine. All right. Oh my goodness, this is just the last thing we need. Especially with the wedding coming up and all.
And don't be surprised if they stage some protests. They say that they say it on their Facebook, their Facebook page, that they're gonna stage some protests.
They have a Facebook page?
Oh yeah. They're very organized.
Okay, I mean, so did they say when?
No, they're just trying to organize. They're trying to get people together right now. Just don't be surprised if there's a picket line or something. Just try to make your way through. Try not to get hurt.
Get hurt? Is it? Oh my goodness.
Why was I named?
Yeah, why was Drum named? He didn't even do anything.
I think it was just kind of a proximity thing for him.
A proximity thing?
Well, he didn't do anything to stop it.
But that's not his job. Okay, all right, I appreciate it. Well, look, we'll try to kind of get our thoughts together, and I'll swing by, can I get an appointment to swing by, and we'll discuss strategy or something.
Oh, sure, yeah. I'll just call the office, and we'll set you up.
All right, thanks. That's great. Oh my goodness, that's just really the last thing we need. With the wedding coming up and episode 100 and this happening, everything's just going on, and it's funny how all of this stuff just kind of comes to a head when we have a nice, big milestone episode.
Also, I found evidence that MURD is back.
MURD's! Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh, okay. Obviously, we've got a lot to do, so I'm going to go talk to my attorney and try to figure out apparently what to do with MURD as well. So I really do appreciate y'all joining us today. Please do check out our Discord server in the show notes page, as well as links to get to the Free Dragon Warrior soundtrack, also our Patreon page, and everyone, do me a favor. I was going through Apple Podcast, and I pulled this up, and I realized it's like, hey, we don't hardly have any reviews, and I know a lot more people listen to us than this. And then I realized, well, okay, I haven't actually asked y'all to review our show, and so I'm asking now. I know that a lot of you are really enjoying the show, and I have the pleasure of talking with you every single day, and I really do appreciate your support. If you do like the show, please go give us a 5-star review on either Apple Podcast or whatever podcast catcher you use. If you are able to rate and review us, that really does help us a lot. And I've done a very poor job of actually asking people to do that, but please do take a moment to do that, and that'd be greatly appreciated. Our Patreon page, as these albums are coming out, they will be available on the music download tier of our Patreon, Techno Funk Boy. Patreon.com/TechnoFunkBoy. Supporting us there, you will be able to get access to these things right away, and won't have to purchase from iTunes or wherever you purchase music. And so more on that later, but in the meantime, we really do appreciate it. We will catch you next week.
The Retro Zoo Super Show is brought to you by the Techno Funk Boy. Follow us on Twitter at Techno Funk Boy, on Facebook at the Techno Funk Boy, and sign up for our email list at technofunkboy.com. Also look for us on Spotify, iTunes, and Amazon for music. If you are so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast catcher. If you are not so inclined, you are obviously some sort of villain trying to conquer the world. Unowned music and gameplay clips are used for educational and critical purposes. Thank you for listening. Keep gaming. And once you have responsibilities that need to be done over time, then you can gain leader.